Please?
We need to go off mic. Hello, everybody. It is December 16th, 2024, 7:08 p.m. EST, and you're watching the Dovecote episode 52 with Aaron Voigt. Aaron, hi. Feel free to please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name's Aaron Voigt. I'm a tabletop RPG enthusiast and YouTuber, and I'm happy to be here.
Hell yeah. Um, we I should just be honest. I didn't go live previously, so we've done like the preamble a little bit. Um, if you'd be willing to be so gracious and repeat the explanation as to how you started doing video essays, I would be most deviously grateful.
No, absolutely. Yeah, so I get into the indie RPG scene through the 2020 Racial Justice bundle on itch.io. That huge bundle that had like 1,000 games or something on it. And I start looking through those games and I go, wow, these games are way different than Dungeons and Dragons, and also tabletop games are not just Dungeons and Dragons. I had previously, heard a little bit about PBTA, but not nearly the exposure that itch.io's bundle got me to. Um, so I start doing them. I start reading through those games, and some of those games are just like on Word documents, right? They're like not super well laid out. They're just kind of like words on screen. And I go, oh, that's easy. I could do that. Um, and I start making games in 2021. That's kind of how I start getting into the indie scene. I am frankly not that good at it, which is fine. That's kind of the point of being in the indie scene. Um, but I had also been listening to a lot of like Range Touch podcasts with Cameron Kunzelman, who does like Just King Things and Rage Study Buddies. And what Kunzelman has this, he said that when he was in grad school, he like got this advice from his professor that when you want to be well read in your field, you should try to read like one piece of like an article from that field per day. Um, and that's like how you become well read. And I was like, oh, I should probably try to do that for tabletop games. Um, and that's kind of how I started getting into YouTube, because I was like, that's going to force me to do tabletop games and engage with their mechanics. And also it like helps me, helps produce, something, a marketing tool for, my fellow creatives in the scene. So that's why I got into YouTube. And from there, I started doing video reviews, and they were great as far as to like help me learn what game mechanics look like and how to understand how games are put together. But I did find them a little bit boring. And because at some point you're just kind of repeating the stuff that's in the text, you're kind of I had a formula that was just like, what is in the text? How do I think it's working? Who is this for? And that kind of got boring after a while. Um, and so I think it starts when I review Sam Lee's Anamnesis, which is a game that I think at that point had, if it hadn't already won an Emmy, it got like pretty wide recognition in the indie scene. I was on Friends at the Table, which is my favorite actual play podcast, and I was like, okay, Sam, doesn't need like a traditional review for this. Let me try to do something different. And I was like, okay, what are the themes of Anamnesis? Talking about like memory loss and remembering identity. And I was like, well, I've played KOTOR and I've played Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories.
Mhm.
And those games are about amnesia, and maybe I can make like some connections there. And I think that was technically my first video essay. And then I keep making reviews that are a little bit in that style. I don't, I start deviating away. I do a mouse reader review that draws on Redwall that I think was really good. Um, and at some point in 2023, somebody calls me a video essayist. I was like, oh, that sounds way better than YouTuber. I'm going to start calling myself that. Um, and from there, I really have drifted more into a video essay style format, trying to do a little bit more interesting takes on games. I try to borrow the Dice Exploder formula of like zeroing in a specific part of a game and being like, okay, let's talk about that because that's more or not more interesting, but it's easier to do than just trying to review a game in its entirety. So that's how I am where I am.
Hell yeah. You managed to make that entertaining despite the fact that I've heard it already. So
Yeah.
good work there. Um, yeah, I've been looking through a few of your video essays. Ones that I've really enjoyed. Your most recent one just a day ago, your Pokemon Junior Adventure game essay, which
Mhm.
includes like actual interviews with one of the guys who made it, which is just really cool. Um, I guess like there's kind of a I guess there's kind of broadly a journalistic element in video essayism. Um, but I'm kind of curious, like how did you decide to kind of bring that element into that one in particular to kind of go and interview?
Yeah, I very rarely do interviews with designers, and that's mostly because it's just you have to email someone, oftentimes cold calling them and be like, "Hey, I have a little YouTube channel. Would you like to talk to me about my little hobby?" Um, and that's embarrassing. But for this one, I was like, I don't really have a whole lot of interesting things to say about this game yet because I think it's a great game for kids. Um, but I didn't a lot of the times I have to bring in research articles to like focus on a specific aspect of a game, and I didn't really have much to go with there. But I was looking through the designers and I was like, oh, Bill Slavisek. I guess I
Hmm.
could Google him or look him up on LinkedIn and see what he's up to now. And I did, and I was like, oh, he works at ZeniMax Online, which just coincidentally my co-host on Mortified, Layla, had been working there for 8 months.
Oh shit.
Yeah, so I was like, hey, Layla, do you know this guy? And they were like, well, we're not on the same team, but we share a Slack channel. I could message him and see if he'd be interested. And did the warm handoff. I sent an email, and he was very gracious at this time. And it turned out he had like talked to he had like had just this huge backlog of RPG work. Worked for TSR, worked for Wizards. Eventually, now working at ZeniMaX as like
Right.
a narrative lead on ESO. So like yeah, like it was just like a really cool opportunity to talk to him. But to circle back to the question, I just didn't have enough to say, and I had this weird coincidence, showed up, and I was like, okay, yeah, why not? Worst thing he could say is no. And I think it turned out really good.
Yeah, it's really cool. It really getting a like first-hand interview really feels like a um it's like a step up for a video essay. Like I feel like there's
Right,
some prestige to that. That's really neat.
right. I do want to clarify. I do not consider anything that I do journalism.
Yeah.
Like I think I am very close to doing like marketing basically. But yeah, like getting the interview, it was cool, but like it's not something that I regularly do because it's a lot of work.
Yeah, real. No, totally real. The other video essay that I watched that I really enjoyed was the hidden lore of Wanderhome as a friend
Mm.
of Jay's and a like before I knew Jay, a Wanderhome enjoyer and Wanderhome lore thinker and knower. Um,
Mhm.
I really enjoyed that. One thing that I really liked about it was kind of the emphasis on like I think a problem often with like lore stuff is kind of the Wikipedia effect, where it's like, here is a thing that is true about this universe. We will not tell you why it's true, and in fact, you'll probably have to look somewhere else to figure out why it's true, or like who made it true, right? And I think like
Mhm.
focusing on the people and the creators was really smart in that. That's something that bringing it back that I enjoy about your video essay, and also that I kind of enjoy about like Vadi Vidya, for example's essays, where
Right.
he really focuses on that. Was Vadi's work at all an inspiration?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. I take footage from his essays and I put them in the Wonder Home one. So yeah, no, I was
Hell
absolutely
yeah.
trying to ape his style there.
Good. um, yeah, I'm kind of curious what kind of led you to besides watching a bunch of Elden Ring and Dark Souls lore videos, what kind of led you towards making that?
Yeah. So I think like Elden Ring, obviously, big video game in 2022. Um, but I actually started an indie RPG book club in my, in the town that I live in, and I was like, what's the biggest, friendliest RPG I could open with, to like bring in new people, and then we can get into the, get into the nitty gritty later on. I was like, Wonder Home is a pretty safe bet. That's not to, I know Jay has complicated feelings about, why Wonder Home, has that reputation. But for what it's worth, I thought it was a really good opener, and it worked great because I've been running that club for almost a year now. Um, but like when we read it, I was like, I had never read Wonder Home before. I had like looked through it, but I never like really went through and read it. And when I did read it, I was like, oh, something really interesting is happening here. Um, and then the disc two jam happened, and I was like, oh, there's a Wonder Home director's commentary. Like that's perfect. I
Hmm.
can use the director's commentary as a secondary source. I can bring in my own interpretation, and from there, I was able to put it together, and that's how that Wonder Home video came through. And I think Wonder Home in particular is really good for that kind of speculative analysis, because that's textual in the game. The game is like, stories are bad. We don't want you to tell stories. Um, like, no heroes, right? And you know, I, that's why I felt, or that's not necessarily true. Maybe it is antithetical to the game's ideology to narrativize and create a timeline through it. But like, I don't know. I think a lot of my work is just trying to introduce that kind of fandom into the RPG scene. Um,
Yeah.
I think that's my answer.
I think antithesis can also be a mode of interaction with a work. It's an
Sure.
antagonistic one for sure, but it is certainly a way of interacting with it. Um, Also, my bird is late. Where the fuck are you, Intrero? There you go. There's Intrero, the interview bird, here for the interview.
Hi.
Um, but yeah, I really enjoyed that video essay. I am excited to you truly have a veritable grid of wonderful video essays that I'm excited to sift through. And look at your backlog. Some really cool stuff. Um, I think with that, I'd love to ask you some of my normal questions that I tend to ask guests.
Oh,
Um,
good.
oh, also, I feel like I need to acknowledge this. Speaking of Aaron King being in the chat, uh, I've obtained the three, like I've had the three Aarons on the show now. I've had you, I've had Aaron King, and I've had uh
Aaron
Aaron
Lim.
Lim, yeah,
Hmm.
on the on the show. And so you know that's powerful. Uh, I know y'all have talked about doing, or not talked about. I know Aaron King has joked about the idea of doing a triple Aaron show at one point. This will be a welcome space for that if you decide you want to do that. Um, uh, Hell, I would even like just not not host that and just be gone because I'm not an Aaron. I would gladly, uh, open my doors for the Aarons to come in and make the space theirs. But
That would be extremely funny. Aaron King just talked about "Till Death Do Us Blart," and I think that is in conversation with our later in topic about suffering games. But
true.
I think that if we did do the Triple Aaron podcast, it would have to be something self-flagellating and intentionally painful.
Yeah,
But
that makes
I'm definitely
sense.
open to it.
Hell yeah. Um, yeah. Awesome. So my normal questions. What I normally ask at the Dovecote, mainly. First of all, what have you been playing lately? Or have any games been or playing, reading, thinking about? What games have been kind of scrolling across your brain pan recently?
I just finished a mini campaign of Spire, which was fun because I really love that world. I really love all of Grant Howitt and Taylor's world building in both of those games, and it was nice to actually sit down and try Spire. Um, Played a couple of games of Heart, but Spire is slightly different in some key ways that I think are interesting. And I just love the setting. I think it's great. Um, as far as reading, um, I wanna sound cool. I have like a list of books I've read this year. Um, the I've had a really good like I read God's Shadow, which was a book about the father of Solomon the Great in the Ottoman
Uh,
Empire. That was a really interesting one. I played the visual novel Misery Chord, which was extremely up my alley, which is about like a murder mystery in like a Catholic convent in England in like the 15th century. That was awesome.
ooh.
But unfortunately, I've also been listening to the A More Civilized Days podcast's coverage of the Timothy's on Star Wars Heir to the Empire trilogy, and I've been reading those books along with them as well. So, it's not all cool esoteric shit. I'm very much a normie in that way, and that I
Yeah.
love Star Wars.
Uh, I've been on AMCA hiatus, but I wanna um I gotta get it back around to it. How are those books like from a from a modern perspective in your estimation?
I mean, I think they're all right, right? I mean, this will come down to a conversation about what is good writing.
Hmm.
I think that they're not especially beautiful, but I think Zahn has some really interesting ideas, and really pretty solid execution of a lot of them. I think there's some silly stuff in there, but also it wouldn't be Star Wars if there wasn't like
Right.
some good ideas that were completely squandered. So like, overall I think they're pretty good, and I think that the respect that the old heads have for that trilogy is understandable.
Yeah. The third thing that you said immediately drew me in because I'm a Star Wars person. Spire. We should talk about RPGs because that's what the show is
Hmm.
normally about. Although
Hmm.
honestly, like, I, I'm not so attached to that that I can't indulge a little. Um,
Sure.
Spire. I haven't actually. I have to admit. Okay. I have I have a little bit of. It's not beef. I have a taboo on Grant Howitt because I didn't really like Eat the Reich. Um,
Okay.
but I haven't really gone back and read any of his earlier work. What's the pitch on Spire? I know it's like a fundamental game that people like, which makes it weird that I'm asking this as like a person who
Sure.
does talk about games. But
Yeah.
I'd
Well, it's
love to
okay
hear like
because
your thoughts on it.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I haven't read Eat the Reich, so maybe that won't work for me. But like Spire is, the game that launched the resistance system. Basically, the pitch is that you play as like dark elf terrorists that live in this mile-high city, the titular Spire, that has been colonized by high elves. They came from their empire in the north and have this imperial conquest across the world, and you are essentially forced into servitude for a period of time called the durance. That's just a thing. Spire is an empire that works on extracting labor as all empires do, and like from there you join what is basically like a terrorist cell, and you try to take them down by or not even take them down necessarily, but just like you fight back and resist them through various different acts. And I think the world building's great. I think the resistance system's powers are really great. I love like I was playing and like I was like, there's no point in really prepping beyond a certain basic beats because like at a certain level you can just change reality. Like there's a racism is a big part in Spire, and one of my players was like, well, what if racism wasn't happening in this part of the city? Like, what if all of the high elves just suddenly became really cool? And I was like, I guess, okay.
That's awesome.
Sure, which is like I love the resistance system in that it just allows players to like completely take these huge swings. It's really fun like that.
Yeah, the most I've engaged with the resistance system is editing uh uh Ruby. I forget what her other
Lavin?
designation. No, not Lavin.
Oh, Grubs, right?
No.
Grub? No?
Ascendancy Ruby. Who's in
Different Ruby.
Kaliskan. Uh, Ruby Gemworks.
Okay.
Iron Spark Cyrus. Yeah, Ruby Scylla Rain. That's who. Who made Ascendancy, editing Ascendancy, which is I believe a resistance. Yeah, resistance teacher. Which was interesting because it was a system that I had not played and have not really played since. Which is weird because it's like I feel like it's like as fundamental as PBTA or like Force in the Dark now. It's just something that I've kind of skirted somehow.
I wouldn't go that far, but yeah, it has a huge impact.
Yeah, it's definitely not as big, but it's definitely big. Having
Right.
beef with the more popular RPG writer is an essential part of the gaming ecosystem, says Aaron.
Hmm.
You make a good point. That's true. You have to fight a little bit.
Hmm.
Um,
That makes sense.
have you been working on anything recently? Anything on the docket, either teacher RPG related or video essays, or would you prefer not to talk about any of that?
I mean, I'm happy to talk about both. I have the idea to do an I'm sorry, did you say street magic hack? That's more focused on like world building from an agrarian perspective.
Oh
Like,
fuck
okay,
yes.
how do you get the crops in your city to work, and like what culture is produced by the processes that come out of harvesting crops. Um, it's not there yet. I think it's gonna need some time because like it's again, I'm not a great game designer, so like I'm gonna have to workshop it for a bit. But I do love world building games, and I love Microscope and Street Magic, etc. Um, so like that's something that I hope to have out next year at some point. As far as actual YouTube stuff, I'm not going to be working on anything for the rest of the year, I don't think. But my 2025 docket, I've got a little spreadsheet with all ideas out. I don't want to like set anything in stone, because like sometimes I'll read a game and like even though I want to cover them or I like the designer, I just can't find an angle. Um, but currently, the games that I think I'm going to cover, I've got 9 topics. I hope to at least get 12 videos out next year. Um, so we'll see.
Hell yeah. Um, I want to take you through a thought exercise, and I'm sorry if this comes off as patronizing, but uh, you have made tabletop role playing games. I know this to be a
Mhm.
fact, but I will ask you nonetheless. You have, yes?
Yes.
Okay. Did you make them from an earnest place of desire and interest and fascination and emotion and like personal desire?
Yes.
Okay, you're a great game designer. It's like
Yeah, I mean that's the thing, right? Good is so subjective. Like, Dungeons and Dragons is the most popular role-playing game on the planet, and it's good is not a word that I would use to describe it. I would say it's fine, but it's but it is when you've not to say that I have an encyclopedic knowledge of indie games, but like I've read enough indie games and been lucky enough to have enough chats with designers to be like, oh, I am in a field with people who are just fucking brilliant. That's one of the reasons that J Dragon drives me up the wall because of like she's like 3 years younger than me. It's like how I've had more time than you. Like how are you so much smarter than me?
right.
Um, but that's a personal issue.
Yeah, I think like something that I very strongly believe is that uh if you create art that is like earnest and not bigoted, It's good.
Mhm.
Even if it's like, I don't know. I think, and also like I feel like you as a person who like makes video essays and is looking for like uh deeply considered and reconsidered and reconsidered work will naturally encounter a lot of stuff that is like fundamental or kind of like dynamic changing or zeitgeist changing, and like I think holding yourself to that standard, and I'm sure you I think you know this because I think like what you said implies as much, but like I will reiterate to you because I think it's worth saying like uh I do think like the fact that you're making work and you're making work with such abundance is like really good and really cool. uh
Yeah, I appreciate that. It truly is just a personal hang up that, we all got to work through.
yeah, absolutely. um Hell yeah. Are there any games that are coming out in the future, up or out in the future, that you're excited to play, excited to read, excited to think about?
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I mean, here's the thing is that I'm still constantly trying to figure out what has happened in the scene. Like I haven't I haven't read Apocalypse World yet.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's so much I don't know still. So like I definitely don't I'm not really forward looking in that way. Although I do think 7-part pact is going to be huge once
Mm-hmm.
that goes completely live. I'm very excited to see what that happens. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Are there things you'd recommend that I look out for?
Oh god, Interstitial 2E I think is gonna be really good
Oh.
because I loved
Oh.
Interstitial 1E was the thing that got me into indie TTRPGs, um, and 2 is just kind of uh destruction of the parts of that game that are bad,
Oh
essentially.
no, yeah.
And
Uh,
and sort of a reimagining of it.
I didn't know you were a big interstitial head, Eclipse. Is that how did you
Yeah.
get into it?
My friend Marcy Mousewife, and my other friend Melody Burst, the rabbit, uh, and another friend Mars, who I haven't spoken with in a while. Uh, Marcy was like, "Hey, I'm gonna run an interstitial game. Does anyone want to join?" On Twitter like years ago, and I was like, "This is probably like 2015. I mean, when was I 18? I don't know. 2015 ish. Like I was probably like 17, 18 when this happened. Um, and uh, I was like, yeah, I'd love to play. And then, when this had to be closer to college. This is probably like, oh yeah, like 2017, 2018. Um, but we played and we had like a whole thing of it, and then we were like, okay, we're done with that campaign. What if we played something else? And then what if we played something else? And we just kept playing different indie games. Um, and it was great. I think it's just like such a fun um the it's such an obvious idea that like I've had people like parallel come up with it on their own. Like, hey,
Right,
either like, hey, what if there's a Kingdom Hearts game where you could play any character, or hey,
right.
what if we were all coming from our own worlds and trying to stop like some sort of evil force that was destroying all the worlds.
Hmm.
And it's like that's just that game exists. It's called Interstitial.
Yeah,
It's awesome.
yeah. My 15 minutes of fame with interstitial are that I was living in Northwest Indiana at the time that interstitial was kickstarting, and I like drove to Chicago to play test it with I think Riley was there. I don't remember. I was not in the scene at all really, but I just like saw that there was a Kingdom Hearts role playing game on Reddit when Riley was talking about it. And so interstitial that like play test was the first PBTA game I played and the first indie game I played really. So I was just I it's very fun to like have come back into the scene and be like, oh yeah, that thing that I went to that one time is actually a huge deal in this new hobby that I have.
That's very funny. That I think it's both of our first indie game and both of our first PBTA.
Yeah. I mean, listen, it's hard to compete with Kingdom Hearts from there.
Yeah.
Like, sorry, Vincent Baker, but
I think 2E will be a big opportunity for Riley to show their growth as a designer, says Mossy. I agree, and I will also say I think Riley has surrounded himself with some really, really great designers, um, that I think will make that game amazing. Like I think about like Marn especially, like some of the stuff that Marn has shown in terms of stuff that they've written for Interstitial is just really really good. Um, I'm trying to think about any other games. I mean, I'll talk about some of the games that my friends are making in the latter half.
Yeah.
But uh, anything that my friends are making, like I think that there's I'll I'll I'll, I'll go into it more, but like there's a weird there's a pervert RPG revolution happening, and it's very quiet, but it's a low rumble, but it's happening. Um, Speaking of pervert RPGs, things you should go back to. Apocalypse World is actually very good, and I think teaches you a lot about game design. Reading
Yeah,
through it.
I'm gonna I have to read Apocalypse World next year. It's embarrassing to me that I haven't. So yeah.
No, I was similar. I hadn't read it until I started working on Sapphic World, and then that kind of changed some stuff in how I thought about that. Um, are there any things besides Apocalypse World that you're like excited to look back towards and read?
Oh, I mean that's the fun of the YouTube channel is that it does give me an excuse to revisit games that are quote unquote older. The one of the big downsides of the indie scene is that just so many people are making so much cool shit all the time that it's just
Hmm.
a torrent. Um, but one thing I am hoping to cover, I think, is Blades in the Dark,
Oh
which is
hell yeah!
another critical indie game that I have not read, and like that's another game that I need to read next year. That's like, all right, I'm gonna take the breath. I've read Forged in the Dark games, but I haven't read the Forged in the Dark game, and that's actually the on my little book club. That's the first thing we're gonna read in January. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do it finally. I'm gonna look John Harper in the eyes and say, I know your game.
It's a good one. I quite like it. Um, okay, this is very ADHD of me, but two things. So on your little icon, the
Mhm.
blue of your icon is very similar to the blue of the drapes in the
It
Dovecote,
is.
and two, the line that runs up to the left from your head looks like it could be part of the same gilding on the edge of the drapes. Like it looks like a
Yeah.
contiguous line. Uh, that's just been really
Nice.
distracting me.
Yeah.
Um,
No. That profile is by Eater Outsider, who is on Blue Sky and Tumblr, but Eater is a really good artist.
Let me
Highly
get
recommend.
Eater Outsider. Ba. Here we go. Uh, I don't think this is them. If you could send me
I will.
their.
Yeah, I'm gonna drop that in our
Thank you.
chat
Yay.
here.
Hell yeah. Ah, I put an extra A in there.
Yeah. No, I should have clarified. Different Eater.
Oh my gosh, my two favorite broadcasters in one place. I will. My one of my favorite game designers in one place. Actually, I would say multiple of my favorite game designers in one place, considering Aaron and Mossy are also in there. Who else is in? Yeah, yeah. Hell yeah. Um, cool. Yeah. How do we feel about going into not really news today? We're gonna do topics. I said on the well, actually, this was mostly Aaron's idea, but I did say like on the episode 50 that I wanted to do more varied blocks, and so we're gonna be doing topics instead of news.
Ooh.
And also Aaron like graciously came up with a bunch of really wonderful topics,
That was
which
more
was
because I didn't want to talk about Funko obliterating Ichio for a
yeah.
horrible 6
No, that's
hours.
fair. Yeah, hell yeah. Yeah, I think we'll probably go through. Well, we'll see what time looks like, but maybe one or two of these, and then we'll take a little break. Um, all right. So let's get Cordis the news bird in here. I need to have like a topics bird. I need to. This was discussed in episode 50, and I need to have like uh special birds for different things. Anyways, there we go. Oh, Cordis is coming in from. Oh god, what's a good place? Good relaxing environ. Like a desert oasis. I probably said that one before,
Yeah.
but we're becoming desert oasis pilled tonight. Um, okay. So, do you want to do these in order, or do you want to bounce around? Totally up to you.
Let's start with number one, and we'll see where we end up.
Hell yeah. So Aaron put together this really lovely topic, fiction and RPGs, um, with a couple of things in mind. First of all, this really great Meat Castle blog in defense of fiction, which is really great, um, as well as this thread from Jay. We'll be showing these as we go. I just want to, and also this Prismatic Wasteland lore. What is it good for? Uh, some really good reading here. So let me. I just realized I forgot to like cleanly arrange these. So,
That's all right.
uh, but yeah, if would you be willing to kind of intro like what this is about?
Yeah, I mean, it's not really about anything. It's just like I have been writing short stories based in RPG settings for the past couple
Yeah.
months, and part of that is just because, like, I considered myself a like novelist for a while. I don't know where my novelist stuff is gonna go in the future, but like, I wanted to get back into exercising my fiction muscles, and I'm in the RPG space, and so I thought it would be fun to write little short stories based in RPGs, and I've got four out. I'll probably have another one out by the end of the year. Um, but like, I, I think Christian's blog here does get at some really important things about why fiction is neat to have in RPGs. It is reasonable, I think, to consider the role of every TTRPG book in inspiring play is a thing that Christian writes. Another quote is, additionally, writing can inspire actionable aspects of the game as well, things that the GM use or can aim to replicate if they are so inspired, mostly narrative voice and evocative descriptions. You should read that whole blog, but like, like, I wish I had like a more profound point about fiction and RPGs besides the fact that I personally think it's neat. I think it's nice when people invest in their work and are like, you know what, let's just put a little tidbit in here. That's kind of why I liked the Wonder Home, like, hiding little lore snippets into to various item descriptions and places, etc. Um and I just think it's an interesting idea, right? Like, I'm sure this is something I picked up on Tumblr, but like, the idea that lore is like something to be avoided in RPGs, and that, I'm sure that comes from the great big D&D tomes with all of their pages and pages of flavor text. Um, but like, I don't know. I like that stuff. That's why I like Heart and Spire. I like that setting details, and part of that is because I'm a filthy YouTuber and I need content to make me feel good inside. But like, I also like just having those little tools that you can be like, okay, I'm gonna plop something in from this thing into my game, and sometimes, like Christian is saying, like that could be a short story or a
Hmm.
lore snippet that inspires play.
You said in response to Jay's 7-part patch lore here, game designers, please put more lore snippets into your work. The YouTubers crossed out children crave fictional context. Um, I very much agree. I think I have a hot take, which is that you can cram as much fiction as you want into a thing, as long as the mechanically relevant part is bolded.
Right,
As
right.
like if you're doing a PBTA, for example, like the if as long as the when you bit is bolded, you're good to go. Um, and I think there's a lot that can be done with like fiction in TTRPGs to one, like honestly, like kind of reduce prep for GMs in some cases, depending on like what the game is. Sometimes it can increase prep. Like it really depends
Sure.
on the vibe. Um, and then I think too, like as you said, it's just really interesting. It's just like it's a fun thing to look at. Um, and yeah, World of Darkness ruined lore in RPGs for 30 years. When all the examples of gamebook fiction were bad, it definitely felt like the idea of fiction in games were bad from Aaron King. Um, yeah, I this is true. The read aloud box is a do or die zone. I do think there's like something to be said about like conciseness in the parts that matter, and then like you can just kind of have fun.
Hmm. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of usability, yeah, I completely agree. You want to have stuff that stuff is separate and clear, or not even necessarily separate, just clear. That's like, hey, here's the stuff that players can pull on. But like, yeah, I think that stuff's neat. I like to be able to see stories in the world. I just think it's fun to again, I'm a novelist. I like the world building aspect of that, and I want more people to feel comfortable, being like, I have created not just a game to be played with, but there is an imagined world that I've got going on, and I want you all to take a look into it. And I think that's a real reason why I struggle with OSR games, is because they are so functional as to be kind of hard to get sometimes. I love flavor.
Yeah. What some OSR games that I would point to that don't do this. I would say Electrum Archives is a really good example of like an
Mm,
OSR game that is like so clearly interested in having you do a specific thing with it that it like bakes a lot of those vibes in. That I really enjoy that, and then also I don't know if she has a version of it that she's like currently hawking necessarily, but my partner and creative collaborator Wendy Ribston's Rust and Raiders. Um, I love when an OSR game is like, okay, so we have these really tight mechanics around like combat and currency and all this stuff. What if we use that to like world build, right? Like, what if there was no written language in our world? What if there was no what if currency was ink, like in Electrum Archives?
hmm.
Um, and so I do think that there is a way for OSR to be rich in that way. It's just kind of
Yeah.
an uphill battle sometimes with the ways
Yeah,
that people do it.
absolutely. Yeah, and to be clear, I have not read that many OSR games. So
Fair.
like, I'm
I
I'm
also
sure
haven't.
I'm sure. Yeah, that is not the case. I really do want to read Electrum Archive. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think my recent kick on RPG fiction is truly more about fandom. I
Hmm.
think is if I'm being completely honest, which I don't love to say because fandom has a lot of implications in it. But like, I I kind of want I kind of want thinking about what you were saying about Sam Lee and making our RPGs exhibitive, right?
I didn't say that
I
on this version of the
oops,
show. Uh,
y'all got a peek into the past that was
I
obliterated.
said something in the that got lost about like how Sam Lee who made Amnesis and makes like a bunch of really cool indie TTRPG TikToks like has a very unique way of kind of exhibiting TTRPGs in a way that like in a venue that's really generally not necessarily friendly to that.
Right, exactly. And like I kind of want to do something similar with YouTube, right? Because like I think I'm not a critical role person, right? I think that actual play is impenetrable.
Hmm.
But like there are so many people that are, and like they make fan cams and animatics and do fan art, and like I I kind of want to see something similar from the tabletop space. I'm not everybody's cut out to be a designer, aka me. And like I think the best way to contribute to the space is like to do that fan building for other designers and creators. I just like the idea of us taking our own shit more seriously. And that's not to say that nobody doesn't take it seriously, but like I think that's why I want people to put more fiction in their work. Both from a personal, it's fun to write it about it on YouTube, but also just like it shows that you are, invested in your own stuff in a way, and it helps, create space for that kind of fandom to evolve, and maps with blank spaces, but for fan cams, I guess.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious like what that I guess like fan art would probably be like the easiest, right? For
Right.
that and fan writing,
Hmm.
fan fiction. Um,
Thou
Right.
hast journeyed
I think.
far.
Thank you for the raid, Casey. Uh, but yeah, we're talking about fiction in. We're talking about like lore ass fiction in TTRPGs. I think is probably the best short explanation of what we're discussing. Um, uh, uh, I as a designer am very interested in this thing and have done a lot like uh directed in this direction very intentionally. Um, like uh I could point to a lot of my games. Biotriffication is probably the only like big game I've released recently that doesn't do this. Um, but like Sapphic World and We Live Forever are like very much me being very firm in wanting like stuff that is very specific and grounded. And I wrote a blog about like my kind of philosophy on that. Treasures, Realms, and Guys. If anyone wants to seek that out, or actually I'll post that.
Yeah, I want to talk about that because first, here's a bit from Sapphic World that I was like, oh, okay, this rules. Quote: It wasn't always obvious who would win the dog war. Long ago, the dog lich sent only one dancing swordstress to take what is now Stasaset Palace, and that dancer cut her way through 100 Vikings. Your blade dances betwixt your little fingers, and it too can face uneven odds. So that's fucking cool. Firstly,
Okay.
what is the dog war? Who is the dancer that slew 100 Vikings? What is the blade that dances betwixt little fingers? I don't know, but that's all rad. I love that. I love that one fiction can paint such an evocative, history, as well as give you an idea of what play could be like, what kind of stories you could discover. That's great. Um, and then yeah, I also read Treasures, Realms, and Little Guys today, and specifically you call out specificity, which I think is such a smart choice. And then when you talk about Pizza Friday and her sixth sword, and like that's such a fun thing to do, to be like, okay, yeah, there's this thing in the world. It has some unique stuff, right? Here's a treasure. The sword is attached to a little guy. Pizza Friday. It is found in I don't know, the realm of Pizza Friday or whatever. That's such a great way to expand the possibility space of the world, which is really fun.
Well, thank you. Yeah. It's Casey Time says every episode I read of Sapphic World has me desperate to look. I'm gonna blush. Uh, but yeah, no, I like. I was talking to. So recently I redid one of the playbooks for Sapphic World, the Intimate Scholar, who is uh basically a person who like a shut-in whose perversions eventually like extended out into the world around them, and is kind of being forced out of their shelter by the consequences that creates. And they also have a cool like Yu-Gi-Oh ass deck of cards. Um, but one of the things that like I talked to Wendy about, who's doing the layout for Sapphic World, was like, hey, so when I did the moves for that Intimate Scholar, I didn't give them any fiction because I was like, I'm worried about you having to do too much work to fit my words into your layout. And Wendy was like, no, you misunderstand. You should make you should make moves a page long. Uh because like the freaks who are there for that are going to read that stuff, and the freaks who aren't there for that are just going to go to the bolded like mechanical text.
Right.
And so I think there's a lot of value in making lore, and like also with Sapphic World, there's a lot of stuff in that like if you read through all the stuff that's there, it's like a pretty it's cohesive in a way that like Wanderhome isn't, for example. Like not to say it's better, like not even remotely, but it is like intentionally a cohesive like not a certain cohesive, but also like explicit setting. But also, if you just read a little bit, I'm glad that it is evocative in that way. That was my hope. But yeah, I want to see more games that are okay with like. I've received criticism about the way that I'm like both doing kind of a Wanderhomeism and like having little snippets, and also having a cohesive like world, because it means that it's like maybe a little harder for GMs, but also I'm having fun.
Yeah.
Let me play my toys.
I mean, I don't know. That's where I ultimately come down. Like it's very hard for me to get worked up about like any sort of game design or philosophy. Like, am I a systems matter person? Yes, but that's like not a very interesting thing to talk about. So it's like, I don't know, who cares? I think, yeah, right. You're doing something interesting, and you have a clear design, which I think is the most important thing in all art, basically.
Yeah, I agree. Will says there are cool places like descriptions of stats or skills or mechanical spaces that are perfect places for beautiful language. Thinking of Aaron King's work as a huge inspiration here. Agreed. Petra World is like huge in that regard, where it's just like,
Mhm.
oh, this is like so directly evoking a thing that uh, I didn't even know was a part of this world before, but fits so well in it. Like, oh yeah, no, you should have a power where you can just make architecture from nothing. Um,
Mhm.
that makes sense. One way of doing it, lore I like is through different narrators that contradict a bit. Shows it's not fallible. Agreed. Narration is such an important part of this. I feel like I think about like the way that Seven Part Pact explores gender, um, and like sex and sexuality, where it's like you the narrator is not necessarily a character, but is so clearly biased towards wizards as men and biased against witches and biased
Mhm.
towards the establishment and maintenance of a state. Um, it's good stuff.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. No, I also borrowed from what is Jay's blog about narrators? Um,
Hmm.
I'll have to pull it up. But yeah, I that was a big inspiration when I was writing To Talk for the Ravenous, and I was like, this whole book was written by a KGB agent, and you could
Fuck
tell.
yes.
Uh, um, so yeah, I think that's another good way to introduce world building, right? Is with your narration, and to be like, okay, yeah, the text has a point of view. Is that the correct point of view? I don't know. You'll have to figure that out.
Yeah, I agree. You have some other questions here that I'm kind of chomping at the bit to get to. I'd love to
Yeah.
I'd love to hear them from your in your own words.
Yeah. Um, is that the one about like where I ask you what good writing is?
Well, the one before it is also really good. The how do we make it entertaining?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, uh,
I suppose we've
this
kind of
is
touched on it, but
yeah. Let's see. This goes to that Prismatic Wasteland blog. Lore, what is it good for? And Prismatic Wasteland argues that, like, you have to build the world with your reader. They reference how the Clone Wars in the original Star Wars is just like an offhand thing, but when you reference that, it's like, okay, it creates an idea of what could have happened in the world. Um, it gives them, quote, enough to get the vibes right, which is really really important. Um, and then they go on to talk about how character creation is a really useful area to do that, and how like OD&D, the setting was implied through various tables and items and stuff. Um, and that is fun. I think that's useful. But yeah, what do you think as far as like making things entertaining instead of grading? Because like I just have higher tolerance for reading bricks of text, I guess.
yeah, I think it helps to make it alive. It needs to be like I for example in Sapphic World, I don't include any. I think there are a couple of places where I include things that are like uh hmm. I don't include a name of a person unless they are a person you can meet, right? Like I think utility is really important because people are coming to games not to be uh not to be ranted at. There's a reason why a lot of stuff in Wanderhome shows up twice or three times, right? And
Hmm.
some of those times are in playbooks. Like
Right.
I think making those things not just be making those fantasy objects not just be like items, but making them be toys, I think is really important. And that's how you make it fun.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I think that's true, and also me personally, I am kind of interested in seeing like, okay, you little sicko, what? Let's hear the 1,000 year history of your world with 800 dead kings and your custom built language. Like, I think there is a way to do that that isn't Lord of the Rings pastiche. Um, I mean, I don't know. I think the honest answer is like I'm interested to see what people in our community do when they are
Mhm.
trying to emulate that style. Because I think it would be really fascinating to see Will Yobster and Aaron King do something like that when they have all these like big well designed games. It would be interesting to see like, okay, what's that setting gonna produce? Aaron King I think just published their like list of 80 books they read this year,
Mhm.
and I think that certainly King reads enough that they could have like a whole Tolkien-esque fantasy, which would be extremely funny.
Yeah, but I think even Tolkien knew this to some degree. Like the places where there's lore, even in the Silmarillion, to my understanding, like it is lore that relates to things that we know and care about. Um, and so I think like for me at least, like even if you're not like, even if the ancient king is still not alive, like it is interesting if his ring is still around. Like right, like
Sure. Right.
uh, I think that having like connections to the mechanics and to like things that players can act on is beneficial in if you don't want your game to be like a World of Darkness or a D&D. Maybe you do want it to be like that, and like I can't
Mhm.
really stop anyone from wanting that. Um, but I think the things that I find boring about those are the fact that they are often not actionable, not connected. Like I think about even how like World of Darkness, like I read through Changeling at one point. Uh, World of Darkness has a lot of stuff where it's like, here are some personality traits that your character might have, but they're not mechanicalized. It's just lore, and like
Mhm.
that is probably my main thing. Actually, is like at the bare minimum, make sure that things that that are like told to you about your character are like mixed in with a little bit of the good mechanics juice. IMO.
Sure.
Uh,
Right.
that's what's fun to me.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that's fair. I guess is now the time we talk about CUD, because I feel like maybe that's what's happening in CUD is that there's a lot of setting details that I can't get to because I'm getting owned by various clams and
hmm.
desert pumas halfway through my journey.
Cud, yeah. Cud is good writing.
It is. It's a very good writing.
Good writing is gonzo. Good writing is nonsense. Like, it should be. It should feel like you're having a bit of an aneurysm. Like, you should be a little scared. And I will actually answer the what is good writing question. I'd love to hear your opinion on it too. Uh, but before we talk about Cud, and go to like, I guess we'll go to the third bit and maybe take a break after.
Sure.
Cool. Good writing to me is I kind of I had it as I was coming up, and then I forgot. I was thinking about this on my way back home. Um, it's I feel like my like kind of acrid answer is like it's about like perversion. It's about like obsession.
Right.
Um, because that's the sort of work that I make, and that's the sort of work that I really enjoy and like have a lot of appreciation for. But I think if I were to like be a little bit more earnest, I would say that it is about for me the things that I enjoy reading. Uh, like something deeply felt, and I don't mean that in a like things should be sappy way, but I mean that in a like um even the like most perverted mecha fiction, handler hound mecha fiction, is like dealing with thoughts about like the military and like being a trans woman and being kind of under the thumb of like these structures, these power structures. Um, and I think that that's where I find really good writing is like the execution of those really deeply felt held feelings, even if they are like being played with, even if they are like being thrown around so lightly. Um, that's what I want. I want them to be. I want to know that someone's going through it, even if it is like a deeply positive thing. Yeah.
No, I think that's a really good answer. Yeah, execution on whatever you're trying to evoke is harder to do than it is to say.
Yeah. What about you? What do you think? What do you what's good for you?
I don't know. I wouldn't ask so many people if I knew what good writing was. um, I mean, I don't know. I think it is right. For Aaron King, it is an old man making a ramp in his ice cream shop so that he can do his work a little bit better. For J
Uh,
Dragon, it is working within a specific context and trying to achieve a specific effect. For you, it is execution. For me, it is the Left Behind books. I think. Do you know what the Left
mm,
Behind books are?
no, I don't. What are those?
Oh God. Okay. In 1995, a very bad pair of men named Tim LaHaye and Jerry B. Jenkins wrote a series of evangelical end times novels that talked about the Christian rapture and how horrific they will be. There's like 14 books in the series. If you are somebody who is a recovering evangelical, highly recommend uh, Tim Lanning and Jennifer Cheek's Tribulation Farce podcast because they are reading through those books now and they're hilarious. But those books have like dog shit writing. They are racist. They are homophobic. They are just conservative fever dreams in the 90s and 2000s in the worst way possible. But they do the rapture in a really cool way. They talk about how, the moon rises red and the earth shakes with God's wrath and people are just getting owned by, 2 million strong hordes of flaming demon horses or whatever. Um and like despite the fact that I have nothing but contempt for the people who wrote those books and their beliefs, I kind of have to give it up for them putting cool shit in a book. And like I don't know that you can get away with anything if you don't put cool shit in there. Like I think or rather I think you can get away with anything if you have cool stuff happen in your work. I would not recommend you buy at any point anything produced by those people. Do not materially support them. But yeah, like sometimes you just have to put a big monster on the cover and then in act 2 a big monster shows up.
Yeah, no, I actually deeply agree with that philosophy as well. Like, I think one of my favorite video games, Kenshi, has like dog shit like prose, uh,
Mhm.
but some of the concepts in it are really good. Like the idea that there are robots who live forever and like have seen terraforming eyes fall from the sky. Uh, like it's as long as cool shit happens, I don't care. Agreed. Real.
And like that philosophy is like so opposed to what I see in your work, in the people who write with Cud, in Tamsin Muir, like people who have like beautiful prose like that. It is so at odds because like there are some people who just know how to do the fucking craft, and like I struggle to get between like some people really just know how to get a sentence right, and sometimes you have to put 100 airplanes crashing because their pilots got taken to heaven mid-flight. Like I don't know,
Yeah,
it's
that's
weird.
awesome.
It is hard to square those two beliefs, but I think they can both live together.
Yeah, I think if you were to define my philosophy, it is trying to do sick shit executed well. Like I am trying
Mhm.
to sick, really silly shit executed well. Like
Right.
I wrote a Sapphic World NPC who's not actually in the main book and probably won't be, who's just like a very earnest imagination of like what a cum miser would look like the heat
Oh
miser, snow
God.
miser. Um,
Oh.
and sometimes you just have to do that. And it's okay. You can get all silly with it. But
Oh, happy holidays, everyone.
happy holidays, everybody. Uh, God. Um, you want to talk about the end of the year? Speaking of which,
Yeah, yeah.
hell yeah.
I love end of the year wrap ups. I think that comes from I got into Giant Bomb into like 2015, but I know they'd been doing their like end of the year, like video game, death matches for years before that. But I learned about it in 2015, and I just really love the kind of like looking back at the year and like kind of talking about and reminiscing about the things that we felt and experienced throughout the year. I write myself a letter every year to like kind of help me figure out where I am emotionally, and write down my goals for next year. I keep lists of all the games and books I've read throughout the year, and in some attempt to kind of like remember what had happened and what I had experienced. I think there is some value to that kind of retrospection, even if it is a little bit masturbatory at times. I love jerking off, so it makes sense.
Hell yeah.
Um, but like, uh, I like the at the top of our thing we have the Game Awards, which it seems like you did not love, and I kind of loved it, so we should talk about that.
Sucks. What do you like about it?
I I
So
love the commercials. I love that. I love seeing commercials. I loved E3. Like I loved the opportunity just to see a bunch of new shit and get excited about it, even though I buy like maybe less than 1% of anything that ever gets shown at those things.
mhm.
It's just the opportunity to participate in hype, right? Like I think I don't remember who I heard this about, but I heard it from a podcast or something where they're talking about how like the the time that somebody is most excited to get a board game is right before they open it. And as soon as they open it, all of the excitement craters. And that is how I feel about video games. It's like, oh, it's so exciting just to see what new things are being shown. Yes, Aaron, the flutist who is incredible in their orchestra. Um, like I think that's I love the Game Awards orchestra. I love that they do live music. I wish they opened with Linkin Park song. I wish Imagine Dragons was there.
Yeah,
But they got
same.
21 Pilots, so that's okay. I also have bad taste in music, apparently.
Rip.
But we can't all be perfect. Um, uh, yeah, I don't know. And Astrobot won. I loved Astrobot. That was one of the big games I played this year, and I loved Astrobot. So I thought the Game Awards were fun.
I feel like for me it's I like a lot of the reveals. Like I'm very excited about the new Elden Ring thing where it's like they're bringing back like Dark Souls 1 and 3 bosses,
Yeah,
maybe 2, I guess we'll see. Um maybe Bloodborne, I don't know. Here's fingers crossed. Um
we'll see.
I like it's always exciting being like, "Ooh, will they announce a new thing of the thing that I enjoy?" That's always cool. I do feel like we've entered a weird stasis with games where they're like, and I kind of, it's kind of a reflection of like American politics in a lot of ways, where it's
Mhm.
like the ghouls have been so deeply enshrined that it's like kind of hard to take them out of it.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, like Randy Pitchford going up there and blowing a big
mhm.
fart about Borderlands, like that sucks, right?
Yeah, Randy Pitchford, Neil Druckmann,
Right.
showing his new game. Like
Hmm.
there is a there's a really toxic. I mean, it's a bad industry. It's a really
Yeah,
bad
no, no
industry.
doubt,
And
no
it's a
doubt.
celebration of it. I did like Statler and Waldorf.
Right. No, but here's the thing. It's very funny when Statler and Waldorf are like, "Oh, did you hear that Kojima is Jeff Keighley's friend?" And then the other guy's like, "Yeah, but does Kojima know that?"
Really good.
Like, fucking
Um,
oh, that's great. Uh,
yeah, I
I think you're right, right? The games industry is like many things in America, rotten to the core, but like
mhm.
I don't know. I think we have to get our laughs in when we can.
I would agree. It is. I do love to sigh though. I do love to look at the AI cat video
Uh,
game and sigh,
yeah.
quote unquote video game and sigh.
Listen, part of that is also being able to boo and throw tomatoes at the dog shit we get served.
Yeah, true. Hell yeah. We each wrote some things that we'd like to talk about or highlight. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like, just in the vein of doing shout outs for things, I was lucky to be on the Dice Exploder roundup this year. I love roundups, as I just said. It was really cool to be on with Mint and Rowan and Sam and talk about cool stuff that happened this year. So if you want like my whole year end thoughts, you can check that out. Um, but yeah, I just really liked to think back about the games that I had heard about and played because I don't often read through games that are new, but there were like three like pretty fun games that were new that came out this year, and in particular, I thought, God, what was the Bully Pulpit Milk Factory game that I talked about, the Milk LARP. I
Awesome.
thought that was such a fun idea to be like, I want to take something boring and turn it into a LARP, which I love. Um, and then Rascal. I mean, like, I don't think we could talk about tabletop RPGs this year without talking about Rascal, which is just
Hmm.
like the most important contribution to our scene right now is like having
Hmm.
real ass journalists do real ass journalism, and like we were just talking about, uncover the worms that are hiding under every rock in the tabletop scene, right? Video games journalism obviously is taking a beating, and tabletop journalism is practically non-existent, but Rascal is still out there doing actual investigative journalism, and it's just really great that they're actually doing that. And in particular, I wanted to shout out, aside from investigative journalism, they're doing really cool, like, interesting takes. Thomas Winwell has this, like, he looks into this, like bit of D&D lore called Zorvintal, which is just, the great game between, the English colonial powers in the 17th and 18th centuries, I think.
Hmm.
You just dropped the link to that story in there, but like, just having the space to have people do, like editorials or essays like this is so important. And I'm just thrilled that this exists in our space. I don't know if there's any particular Rascal stuff you want to shout out.
Ooh, oh, what's... I feel like I've talked about a couple of good ones. Hmm. I feel like I've definitely... Wasn't there a good, There's one on, like, war games that wound up being, like, really prophetic. Or was this on Rascal? Uh... No, it wasn't. Rip. Um... Well, either way, I do recommend Rascal broadly. Uh,
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I wish I had one in mind, but yeah, really, 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 really good site. Highly recommend.
Mhm. Yeah. Um, and then just personally, I had a really good episode or year with Mortified, which is my other podcast that I do with my friend Layla. In particular, if you think that I have said anything smart so far this stream, I highly recommend you check out our podcast on Iron Lung, which is maybe our best episode, where we just like actually get into game design discussions and talk about like why Iron Lung really worked for us, and also talk about people going down in submarines and getting exploded, which was an interesting time. And then I also want to shout out Blurry Disposition, who is, I think there is a growing number of people doing indie RPG coverage on YouTube, but I think Blurry is doing something really fascinating with their work. In particular, he wrote about Songbird by Snow, and I think it's a great video. I contributed a little bit to that, but he like assembled a team of people to write about songbirds, which was really really cool. So highly recommend his video on songbirds.
Hell yeah, all really good recommendations. I actually need to sift through these because I've been busy with work all last week and this week. But hell yeah, um, mine are weird. I'll start with this one, which is I hosted the awards 2024 this year, and I thought they had some really great like tabletop role playing game recommendations. I recommend giving that a look. Some neat stuff. I highly recommend that. And then I'll talk about the Teacher of G stuff first. Um, I have a bunch of tabletop role playing games made by my friends that I want to recommend to people. First of all, Euphoria 2180 by Lilith Like Leviathan, which is a open world post apocalyptic tabletop role playing game. Uh, Body weird flesh pervert stuff. Mutations and augments and going into factories and looting the hell out of them. Like very quick tactical combat, very swingy, very good shit. Um, Inhuman Resources by Softy and I Feel Odd, two of my other collaborators. Um, really, really fun, like kind of groundwork for a almost Half-Life-esque or Abiotic Factor-esque um, Powered by the Apocalypse, where you are escaping a like or trying to escape a laboratory that you work in where everything has gone to shit, and people are turning into animals. Um, Jay's 7-part pack, which I believe we've mentioned before. 7 wizards, uh, and they're kissing each other probably, but they might also be doing other stuff, like maybe killing each other, or
Jay gave me maybe the best pitch on 7 Part Pact, which was you're gonna shit yourself when you see this game.
yeah, it's good. And then not a game that's out yet, but Kill the Bastards by my friend Mags, who was on last episode. Really, really fun. Uh, Also very swingy tactical combat, where you're going into mega cities in the at the end of kind of the modern era, and killing, um, you know, Luigi number one, basically. Yeah,
Hmm.
you're doing some stuff. Um, but yeah, those are my tabletop role playing game recommendations. Um, I'll highlight this one first because I don't think I'll have as much to say about it. If you have virtual reality, Blade and Sorcery VR got its 1.0 this year, and it's really good. Like, it's earnestly like not a very like well written or like uh plotted out game, but like I think probably the best model uh that VR has done for like physical interaction with things and like sword
Oh.
fighting and like spell casting, which is the shit that I care about as a huge nerd. Um, I love to like grip the like side of my blade as someone's coming in for a strike to like do a half sword block,
Oh, that's
and
so
then like
sick.
it's good. It's a really good game. Really good mods for that as well. Um, Highly recommend it. Caves of Cud. We should talk about this. You have
Hmm.
questions about Caves of Cud. So you've been dying in it, is my understanding.
Yeah, so it's a roguelike, which means that when you die, you go back and you have to start all over, and that's hard.
I'm gonna set you free. Most people don't play on the roguelike mode. It's really hard. I play on
Oh,
roleplay
okay.
mode. It's like, it's way more. I think the game is way more fun if you play it on roleplay mode. At least for like a
Okay.
first playthrough. I think roguelike is way too hardcore in a lot of ways. It's And I think the other thing is just kind of like taking your time with it. I've done some roguelike at this point. Um, but broadly I would say like yeah, play on roleplay mode. It's You're gonna have a better time. Cut is so sudden and swingy, and like you'll be walking over something in one moment, and then there'll be a portal to the other side of the map, and you'll get killed by a thing called like a sklomper, and you won't even know what it is. Yeah, no, don't. I highly recommend playing on roleplay. It's a lot
Okay.
easy. It's a lot more fun.
I will start there. I think one of the main issues I'm having with it is like it seems like everybody who's talking about it is talking about the stuff like the writing, the exploration, but to me it seems like a game that is mostly combat oriented. Like I've in my playthroughs I've gone to that one Red Rock place and done that dungeon first to like level up and kill all those whatever the creatures are in there. Um and like I'm still like struggling to be like okay and then what like is this a game that you think is mostly about combat?
There's a lot of combat in it. I will say, like, using the look function on things is a really good way to see, like, immediately some of the strange prayers that it has. Like, if you look at,
Hmm.
like, a chalkboard, it'll be, like, uh, something about, like, the black slate held aloft by the monster. Um, like, it's got some really interesting stuff there. And then what I would also say is, like, what you can do is get wayfaring, get like the like get a couple
Mm,
of the like traveling oriented perks, and just
right.
start going around, like, make sure you're loaded up on water, and start going around to any tile that is distinct from the other tiles.
Hmm.
So, like, anything that looks like a town, and you might find some characters there, and you might be able to talk to them, and you might learn a thing or two.
Okay.
And also, are you using Auto Explorer?
No. What is that?
Okay, you should figure out what button that is. It's probably zero. Um,
I'm
there's
also
like
playing on a Steam Deck, which is not helping.
okay, yeah, you should figure out what button that is. There's like lore that's like some of it is auto generated, some of it is written out. But there's lore that you can find that is like across, like you can like there are like statues and stuff that have like bits of lore that's like really interesting about like the sultans and stuff. Also like the way that CUD creates narrative is really interesting, where like everything is relevant. Like you will, if you talk to a character and they're like, you know, we were primeval before we understood the elegance of the glass jug. Like they will probably have a glass jug somewhere in their base, or in their town, and it'll have some lore about like, you know, that very thing. CUD tends to like repeat the auto generated stuff in really interesting ways. And I think like leaning into that is part of it. But also there's a lot of like really well written stuff that you like, you know, actually written stuff that you can find. Especially by like, you know, completing quests and then following up on those. There's a lot of really great characters. I highly recommend. There's a quest that you can get by going to the top part of the desert, the 6 day stilt. There is a like
Hmm.
centaur person who will tell you about her village. If you go there, there's a really good quest that is like fully written out. It's like this really interesting mystery um, that says a lot about what the world of CUD believes, and it's good.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think a lot of it is just exploring and like not being discouraged by the first couple hours being killing enemies,
Okay.
probably.
Sure.
Uh, and you know, suspecting that after that you might encounter some more interesting things.
Okay, that is useful to hear. I'm glad that that it isn't just me.
Yeah, that's definitely an understandable place to be because I think I was like that early on when I first started playing it. Um,
Yeah.
how do we feel about Taken 5? And then I don't know if we actually have emails, so maybe we'll just like finish our last topic and then call it a night.
Yeah, sounds good.
Hell yeah. All right. If anyone sends us emails, we will read them, but nonetheless. All right, we'll be back in 5. We'll be back at 33 minutes. So see you all then. Be right back. Hello, everybody. We're back. We're gonna go through our last topic, and then we do have one piece of mail from Will Yobst. So, uh, hell yeah, love to see it. Um, so, our last bit here was suffering games. Aaron has a great video essay on this subject, which you should watch. Pointing my finger at you after this. But really, really, really good video essay that I quite enjoyed. Um, as a liker of suffering games, do you want to kind of summarize what you mean by this?
Yeah, yeah. Um, so it starts by me talking about the game click holding, which is a game where you just like click 10,000 times to get to the ending. I was like, that's kind of silly, but I was compelled by the challenge of like having to do something over and over again to quote unquote win. And then Elliot Davis has this hilarious game, Journey of 1,000 Zips, that is like you have to open and unzip 1,000 zip files in order to win, which I had to like do on my phone because it would work on my computer because my computer is like, that's stupid. I'm not doing that. Um, and then I contrast that with the comedian, I think he's Australian, comedian Tom Walker, and his various like GTA, but the cars are all at max speed streams, and his like, if I have to flip this coin, until I get 10 heads in a row, streams. And like, I think there's just something so funny and compelling about like, willingly subjecting yourself to something that's useless and stupid for, some nebulous reason. And that's what that essay is about. And I just think it's very fun when designers are like, let's make the game dumb and hard on purpose. And I think that's distinct from, games like Souls likes, right, which are like hard but, like fair, and like there's a way to like power yourself up to make them easy. Like that's the only way I can beat Elden Ring is if I like, look up a broken build and do that. um but this is like you just have to, you just have to eat shit for several hours. And I think that there's something funny about that.
Yeah, I've been doing a thing in my free time recently, which I don't even know if I've talked about on stream. With Blade and Sorcery, the VR game that I mentioned earlier. So Blade and Sorcery has like skills and weapons that you can get and armor that you can get. I've been forgoing all of those and trying to beat the game with just my hands for the most part.
Oh my god.
Like, punching and kicking and grabbing. Occasionally,
This
I'll
is
pick up.
presumably a game where you're fighting armored enemies with big
Yeah,
broadswords. Okay,
and magic and like lightning
right.
bolts. So I'm like picking up baskets to like block lightning bolts.
That's really funny.
I should do this as a stream at some point. But yeah,
Yes.
I do occasionally pick up weapons. Like I have a rule where basically I don't have holsters, so like I can't take weapons. There's a lot of like parkour in the game, so I can't take weapons like between fights. But occasionally I will. I mostly like punching, but occasionally I will. If I'm desperate, I'll pick something up. Um, but yeah, like I think there's a lot of fun, both as a like presentational and as you say in the video essay, like as a presentational and like uh entertainment thing, and also just as a sort of uh achieving this thing for yourself thing, with like intentionally suffering for the enjoyment of yourself or others.
Um, one thing that I think you might be able to ask, because like I had this thought while I was writing the essay. I was like, how distinct is this from King? Because like not that distinct, right? And as somebody who has written, kink moves into Sapphic World, I figure you would have a better insight on that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, like I mean, you kind of eventually tie it into like there are like shirts that you can wear when you play video games that like make you hurt when you take damage. Like that is real. And then there's also like now I'm just imagining the person who plays Ultra Kill with like that shirt on and a plug-in, and I'm I'm very fascinated by that mental image. Um, but yeah, like I think that there is something to be said about like controlled pain and like wanting to for yourself or someone else to like encounter the like edges of like acceptable play before it becomes like torture.
Right.
I mean, maybe it does become torture, but like even if it becomes torture, if you know it's becoming torture and you plan on it becoming torture, that it's not torture, right? It is still play. It is still within the bounds of play. Um,
Right.
and so, like, yeah, I do think there is something really interesting to be said about like, uh, it is kind of hot. Like, what is the difference? Like, you can flip a coin 1,000 until it rolls or until it's like heads 10 times for your audience, and that's like normal behavior. But if I do it for my goddess, like then I'm a freak. uh yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I think that those are both like completely valid forms of play, right? Like I think I mean even if you're doing it for yourself, like if it is a game to you, right? That still works, right? And I appreciate your perspective on that because yeah, I think that line between, playing intentionally difficult games and kink is like not that the line is not that distinct.
Yeah,
uh
people describe Dark Souls players as like, well, before people like understood that Dark Souls actually isn't that hard, but like people
right.
describe Dark Souls players as masochists, right?
Right,
um
right.
like some of them might be. I can't
Yeah.
speak. I can only speak for myself. uh
Yeah. I was raised Catholic, so same.
yeah. uh God. um but that is a really interesting thing. Okay, something I noted about suffering games with my own work. So I wrote this game, We Who Travel by Starlight, which is a, actually, I should post that. Which is a like, I don't know how I would describe it. It has BOB qualities. Um, it's inspired by the Mountain Goat's Clemency for the Wizard King, and also it was like explicitly for a Palestine bundle. Um,
Mhm.
and one of the things that I did with it is there are like three like bodies of people or things that you play. You either play like the procession that is like going to go to the powers that be to like ask for their elder back, or you play the forces, like the forces of nature that try to stop them on their way, or you play like the powers that be that await them and have their elder captive, right? Um,
Mhm.
and one of the things that happens uh, with each faction here is that like, the what are their actual names? Uh,
The
yeah,
forces, the procession, and the captors.
yeah. The procession have many options. The forces have many options. The captors,
Right.
uh, many of their options have been crossed out because they executed and imprisoned those people. The other thing with the captors is that the only way that they don't get to interact with the game for the first two acts. They can only watch it. They can only surveil. Um, and then the only thing that they can do is either kill everyone or not kill everyone. Um, and either way, they uh, I mean, well, sorry, they can kill everyone, they can not kill everyone, or they can keep the elder captive. Either way,
Mhm.
the traumas are already been dealt to the procession. Um,
Right.
I have not run this game, and I am like kind of loath to do so. I will probably do it at some point. Um, but the thing that I imagine would happen is that this is probably a deeply miserable experience for whoever plays the captor. Um,
Right.
and it's not necessarily in a like, oh, this is so masochistic that this is so satisfying to do way, or that's not the intent. The intent is that it is made to make one reflect on like how um it is the idea that I've heard Adam Friedland talk about this, like the idea that Israel's not the safest place for the Jewish people, right? Like
Right.
you've created a hell of your own design in a way. uh, by virtue of only allowing yourself violence. And so like the suffering in We Travel by Starlight is kind of intentionally ideological. Um,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is certainly a different kind of suffering than the repetitive suffering that
Mhm.
I'm talking about in my essay. But like, there is, I think the like, um, you know, rules are a cage and I'm a puppy girl like aspect of like, hey, there are limits on the things that this thing can do. That is the game. The game is recognizing like there were options, right? The like what will become of the forces, we'll leave them alone, we'll befriend them, we won't gain control of this land. All that's already, you're unable to do that because the history has already happened.
Mhm.
And like you are left with only a certain amount of options. Like I think that is a very interesting thing for a game to do, is to show you, what the possibility space could have been, but because of what has already happened. I mean, I guess this kind of ties back to lore. Like,
Right.
it is interesting to put options in a game and then say those options were once available but are no longer.
Yeah. Okay, that's a really fun. I should just use that in a Sapphic World title at some point, in a very different capacity. But yeah, I think like I games are cool. I don't know. My brain is
Games are neat.
yeah.
Y'all heard about these?
I very much agree though. Like I think that there's a lot to be said about what's the word? Um yeah, the sort of puppy girl element of it. The J Dragon puppy
Mhm.
girl element of it. Of like you are uh like there are intentional bounds to this thing, and that's where the suffering comes from. Um, and it is also going back to the King conversation. It is confined torture. It is a comprehensible torture
Right.
to not play the first half of a game and only be able to engage with the latter half through cruelty. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, hell yeah. Let's go through what mail we have, and then we'll give it a give it a wrap. It's definitely
Ooh,
a longer episode, but I think we had some good talk. Um,
good.
hell yeah. Last bird, come in, Apocrypha, the news bird. Sorry, mail bird, not news. I fucked
Oh.
it. It's okay. It's allowed. Um, so first from Will Yobst, I will send this to you. Uh, First question, there are two here. First question, why Funko's kill website?
Um. That's a good point. That's such a good question. I think Funkos kill website because Funkos live on website. They love to eat, they love to consume, and they must have data. That's what gives them their glassy eyes.
That makes a lot of sense. Uh, to follow up, but in earnestness, what are some topics you'd like to make video essays about, but are too difficult for one reason or another?
That are too difficult for one reason or another. I mean, oh God, I have like some lists. Um, you know, like I mean, the most, the biggest constraint is time, right? Like
Mhm.
a lot, like the best video essays take a long time to make. And I am caught between like wanting to make very cool and considered essays and also being a marketer in some ways. Like if I only make 5 videos a year, that means I can only highlight 5 designers a year, which is in some ways antithetical to what I'm trying to do, which is to give people shout outs. Um, but I am thinking like Erica Chappelle has the Flying Circus, both the novels, novellas, and the game. I would love to do like
Mhm.
a comparative game on that. Um, I think there's probably a. I would love. I've never read Dog Eat Dog, but I've heard a lot about Dog Eat Dog, and I think that would be like a really interesting thing to like do a historical read with and like try to see what Dog Eat Dog is saying about colonialism and violence, and do a comparison like I did with the Vietnam, before the boats and then we took our war, video.
Right.
Um, I mean, I wish I had a better answer, but like, truly, uh, a lot of my video essays are just like, uh, I just get an idea and it just kind of hits me and it sticks with me for a while and I just have to power through. I truly think that my best essays are ones that I just like get a wild hair and I just go and I just kind of stick with that for a month. So like, yeah, I don't think there's a game in particular that I think that I haven't covered yet that I would want to, but it's too hard. It's just that I don't know what games I want to cover yet. I guess, yeah. I mean, I think that's truly just it. Is like, I there is so very much to learn to quote Kingdom Hearts.
I hmm. So I don't make video essays, but I've had a lot of thoughts about ones I wanted to make. And all right, so Jacob Geller made this video essay about video games that do. Actually, I probably shouldn't say what the video essay is about. Jacob Geller made a video essay about games that do a specific thing,
Mhm.
because he wants that to be hidden. And he talked about Dragon's Dogma 2, and
Mhm.
he said something about Dragon's Dogma 2 that is extremely incorrect, and I don't want to respond to, like, I don't want to be like, hey, Jacob Geller was wrong about this. I want to make my own video essay because I'm the only person who's right about Dragon's Dogma. Um, I'll say specifically, he says like that Dragon's Dogma 2 does a thing in its ending that Dragon's Dogma 1 doesn't do, and he's not right. He's just like he's just actually incorrect about that. uh, and it made me mad. It made me like really mad as the Dragon's Dogma liker and knower. Um, he's generally I love Jacob Keller's video essays to be to be extremely clear.
Sure.
I think they're really good. I was surprised that like he kind of dropped the ball. Um,
Listen, video
specifically,
essays are not that hard to make. You could do it. You could. I wish YouTube had re-enabled PvP where you could make like video responses like in the very
yeah.
early days of YouTube, so you could
Um,
do that.
I would love to do specifically. Honestly, I don't know if it would just be Dragon's Dogma. It would be interesting to do something on endings that like I think I've talked about this before. The idea of like doing a video essay on endings that are about um the observer being uh like taken away, and like how that heals the setting or like what that does for the setting. Um,
Mhm.
I think about like Dragon's Dogma, Lunacid. Uh, what's in it? I feel like I had another one that I was thinking of at one point. Um, there was a I don't know. I made a tweet about it at some point. I should find that tweet so that I can remember what my thoughts were. But like the idea of stories that like are that revel in the idea, not that necessarily that the observer is bad or like is harmful to the story, but like that the observer um that the story needs to be set free of its own constraints, that it needs to be set free of the constraints of observation, are really interesting to me. And I think like uh anyone who actually understands Dragon's Dogma would would understand knows this. But yeah, that would be my video essay. I should make that. You are right. Maybe one day.
Listen, you got to be the video SCS you want to see in the world.
Yeah. Um, is there a TTRG I'd want to make a video essay about? Hmm. I don't know. I feel like I talk about RPGs enough, you know? Sometimes it's like
Mm,
that.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
listen, if anybody out there is interested in making video essays, I have a little how-to video on how I do my process.
You do. I should
And
watch that.
it's yeah, I mean, it's a lot of rambling, but I mean, it's truly just like getting all the information and writing it down and then putting it in a timeline. And you could do far worse than that. I think that the ideas that you have are the most important thing. So like, I would love to see whatever weird takes you all have about games.
Yay. Yay, yay, yay. Hell yeah. Well, that's all the mail we got. So I think literally at like the end of the time that I usually allot to do the Dovecote. Um, thank you so much for being on, Aaron. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you'd like folks to be directed towards?
I don't think so.
I'm nonetheless going to post your YouTube channel one more time.
Oh yeah,
Um,
youtube.com/@aavoigt. That's where I am, and that's where all my videos are.
Hell yeah. Ooh, speaking. Okay, so we're gonna do a raid out of the stream. Speaking of Lunacid, PQ Celu is playing Lunacid. One of my favorite games of, was it last year? Fuck. It should not have been last year, because I kind of want to talk about it when I do my classic, fucking,
2023. So
yeah,
yes.
best of the year thread. I might still talk about it because I have more thoughts on it. It's been percolating. Um, but go say hi to Pikachu. Go watch Lunacid. Um, yeah, thank you so much. Everybody have a great night, and I'll see you next week for. Oh God, who's gonna be on? Hang on, before we before we raid, let me figure out who that is. Uh oh, nothing. I might come on and maybe do a best of the year thing. We'll see. Because I did the awards, so we're not doing like a Dovies thing. We might do that next year. But yeah, take care, everyone. January 6th will be Andrew Gillis. What a crazy day to have someone on. Good night, everyone.
Godspeed.
Bye.
Remember, if you don't like what you see, you can change it. It's up to you, really. Goodbye, good luck, and have fun!